Welcome to another Conveyancing Matters Q&A. This episode is sponsored by Search Bureau. So, Lorraine, we're going to talk about common searches.
Yes, we are. But first things first, Stu, how are you?
I'm absolutely excellent. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Yeah, well, our Search Bureau are sponsoring some chats for us, for which we're very grateful. We thought it would be useful to have some Q&As around issues that Search Bureau might be involved with. So commons registration search is something that people don't necessarily do a lot, something conveyancers don't necessarily need to do a lot, but if you don't do it, it can be a disaster. So what is a commons registration search, Stu? What would you expect it to show us?
Yes, it's one of those, if you don't know, you don't know. And of course, when you have clients buying properties that might have areas without development, without houses around, of course, you've got to consider, could it be a common area?
Yeah, absolutely. So a commons registration search will show us areas that have been designated as common land, often sort of very old, quite sort of historic entries on the records held by the local authority. And actually, I've done sort of personal searches in the past, Stu, and the commons registration registers are literally sort of written in,
Handwritten
type script sort of thing. Quite incredible, really. But the key thing is that, these rights of common can literally give farmers the right to sort of, drove their sheep across what people might think is the land in front of their house or their front garden, or of course give people in the locality the right to sort of, congregate on the land. So it can be really quite difficult for people and important if you don't know about it, can't it?
So where would you say then that you might see sort of these areas, or where would people need to, if you're acting for a client that's buying a property? I've seen them in, for example, new build areas, but that would obviously be on the outskirts. I've seen them in London areas where you've got London parks, that kind of thing. So, if you're a conveyancer and you're considering doing one of these searches, what are you looking out for?
Well, I think this comes back to a bit of a bugbear of mine, Stu, actually, which we will probably talk about in another chat, I'm sure. But actually, conveyancers do need to be looking at the plan of the property that their client is purchasing to sort of see if, for example, the land appears to be next to, or the property appears to be next to open land, or look at the agent's particulars. Is there any reference to a village green?
Yeah.
Is there any reference to open land next to the property? Google it. Do your Google search, do your Google map search if it appears to have open land around it. But as you've said, a really important one that people won't think about that often is you should always do a commons registration search on previously undeveloped land.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as you say, the good old new build.
Yeah.
And this is a completely separate search to anything and any records that the land registry might hold. This isn't a matter of title. But of course, as you've said, Stu, there are areas in cities that are capable of being common land, sort of cobbled areas, old market areas, the rights for people to sort of congregate. So, conveyancers, I think, are looking out for some really quite niche, quite unusual things. And funnily enough, I don't know about you, Stu, but I mean, I worked in a rural area for a long time, and I used to treat a commons registration search as a search we did every time. I used to treat it as a standard search, essentially, because it's not really very expensive and it can be a bit of a disaster if you don't find these things out for your client. So how would you, how would you guys at PCS sort of treat the commons registration search, Stu?
Yeah, so as we've said, you're looking predominantly at the plan. The plan's going to tell you everything that you need to know in terms of, what searches you may want to do, in addition to what we now consider the normal one.
Yes, your standard search.
Yeah, so again, we're used to receiving packs of searches, but of course you do need to evaluate whether those packs are going to cover everything that your client might need to know about. And if you do have areas of, open areas, shall we say, they are a bit of a giveaway. And like we said, the land registry plan itself, that's going to reveal that kind of information. And you need to consider. The other thing as well, you can always ask your client for a bit of information about the surrounding areas. As I alluded to earlier, I think lots of guys and girls may think that rural type areas are going to be more relevant because they will look like they're more open spaces, but you're going to get just as much in new built areas, particularly the outskirts of new build areas, we're close. We've got offices in Basildon and Harlow, new build towns, and there are common areas around both. And of course, London. There are numerous London parks, for example. And as you've said, there are cobbled areas where people congregate. So there's lots to consider.
Yeah, absolutely, there is. So how does somebody do a Commons registration search, Stu?
Yeah, well, of course, no doubt everyone's going to be clamouring to use Search Bureau after watching this video. So, yeah, you would contact your search provider, and obviously you would just put one in hand. They've got various, platforms that you can sort of click a box and order that search.
Yeah, and if you're old like me, the way that you would find out and how to do your common search, it's actually optional inquiry 22 of the Con 29 local inquiries of the local authority form. So it's optional inquiry 22. As you say, lots and lots of search providers will sort of have it just as a search you can apply for, but actually that's where you find it. And I guess a little tiny detour, Stu, as we know, the land registry is migrating, that I hate, the local land charges data from local authorities to the land registry. And as and when that happens for local authorities, that LLC1 data is no longer available from the local authority. But just so people know, the Con 29 information, so your roads, your planning, etc., and your Commons Reg optional inquiry 22, that's always going to continue to be available from the local authority. So you're not going to get that information from anyone other than the local authority. So, and of course, you need to then make sure that you advise on the result of a Commons registration search in your report. Because, of course, Stu, it's one of those things that it is what it is. A client can't do anything about it.
No, a seller can't change the fact that there's one there, so to speak. Yeah.
I mean, it is technically possible to have land deregistered as common land, but that would be very long-winded and extraordinarily expensive and not going to happen very often at all. I did have a client try and do it once, to be fair, bless him. He failed, mind you. But yeah, so because you just don't want your client sort of opening their curtains on a Saturday morning after they've purchased and either find, a load of maypoles and loads of people dancing around the maypoles, or as I say, 200 sheep sort of drifting across.
Of course, the fact that they say to you, you didn't tell me this.
Yeah.
That's the key.
Exactly.
I think also maybe one final point to make. Yeah, these common searches aren't to be confused with plan searches for future development. It's a completely different type of search. Open space may be the key factor on that also, but a different kind of search entirely.
Yeah, so Commons registration search, do it for any new build, previously undeveloped land. If you're purchasing next to a village green or your client has to cross open land to get to the property, that's always a giveaway.
Very important.
And as you say, if there's open land next to the property, or if you're in a city, you've got cobbled areas, potentially markets, they're all examples of where a conveyancer should be doing a Commons registration search, which of course is going to be possible to order from Search Bureau, of course.
Absolutely. Great. Well, I hope everybody found that interesting.
Excellent.
We're going to be doing more chats about searches and areas of conveyancing that come up in search results. So no doubt we'll speak to everybody soon.
Excellent. Thanks, Stu.